Hello everyone, this is part 30 of What If Naruto Had a Secret, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. So, after all that, I ran into Ero Sennin. At first I was gonna just ignore him, or maybe try to hitch a ride back on one of his toads. Then I remembered how Anko grumbled about a mission report after Kusa, so I figured I might have to make one. Only I didn't know how, so I bugged him to show me. Which he did. Kakashi supplied in amusement, but only after he did his research. Exactly. Wait, how'd you know? Naruto asked, confusion on his face. I used to go with him on those research trips when Yondaime was busy, Kakashi answered, I curving up happily. Oh, Naruto said with a roll of his eyes. Just what those women needed, two perverts peeking on them. Two heads are better than one, Kakashi said pleasantly. Anyway, as of now, you're officially on inactive duty for your training trip. Quote. Right, Naruto said, deflating slightly. Now I just gotta figure out what to do till tomorrow. Go on a date, Tenzu suggested helpfully. Sure, Naruto-s. And right after that, Sasuke can grow a pair of wings and beat Anko's old sensei. Just go relax, Naruto, Kakashi offered, chuckling at the mental image. Grumbling, Naruto turned and left to try to do just that, leaving the three ninja alone in the office. Another minute passed, then Kakashi glanced at Danzu, his humor gone. So, did he pass the test? I suppose, Danzu said evenly. The council should at least be pleased with the results. He did an outstanding job for a first time. I think it's an outstanding job, period, Kakashi countered, eye drooping. He managed to complete his mission despite the lack of intel on the Jonin. Not only that, but he also learned which village this Jonin hailed from, which, even if we didn't have Anko's prisoner, would provide us concrete information on who exactly was buying secrets from Bokai. True. However, he did have to K2 High no Kuni ninja and several samurai. Self-defense, Kakashi said amiably. Besides, as long as they weren't fellow Konoha ninja, it doesn't matter who he K. Of course, Danzu agreed blandly. So, not only did you fail your mission to provide us with a very valuable High no Kuni official, but you were defeated by a mere Konoha Chunin. Yes sir, Yugito said, eyes focused straight ahead as was demanded of her, not looking at the wreckage. The office was empty and rather bare. Indeed, the only thing that gave it any sense of personality was the window behind the wreckage's desk, which overlooked a portion of the vast lightning field that surrounded the village. Were you unable to get within range? The wreckage asked sharply. No sir, Yugito said firmly, forcing her temper to stay in check. I made contact with him several times, skin to skin. Well, then, kindly explain how you failed. Your touch K everybody, as you've proven when you K your family and your genin team. I would dearly love to know how a walking ninja of death can fail to K. I don't know how it happened, Yugito said, careful to keep her urge to shout in check. There was nobody more infuriated or upset than her. This threw her usefulness to the village into question, and that usefulness was the only reason she was still alive. All I know, Reikage-sama, is that he seemed resistant to my Shikyo Taki. Resistant, the Reikage said with a contained fury. Of course. How silly of me not to realize that someone could be resistant to a touch of instant death. Of course, that answers everything. It is possible, Yugito said tightly, using all of her willpower to keep from looking at the raging cage, especially since he managed to do so. Do you take me for a fool? The Reikage exploded, fist S into the desk. The only possibly person that could ever prove resistant to your touch might, very dimly, be Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto, Yugito repeated, recognition setting in even as she looked at the furious cage. How did you know his name? Quote. It was in the report our spies supplied of noteworthy Konoha ninja, the Reikage said, reining his temper in. Are you claiming that the Chunin you faced was named Naruto? That was what he claimed, Yugito said, her hands tightening behind her back. Blonde hair, blue eyes, whisker marks. That is the description our spies supplied, the Reikage murmured, sitting back, his anger apparently forgotten. Yugito studied the man for a moment from the corner of her eye, then resumed her stare out the window. Mentally, she was praying he would be too stunned to notice her lapse in protocol. Reikage-sama, would it be possible for me to see the report they supplied? I may encounter him again, and I would like to be better prepared next time. Yes, of course, the Reikage said thoughtfully as he glanced over her shoulder. I trust you know where to go. Yes, Yugito said with a bow, turning to leave, only to be brought up short by the cage's next sentence. In light of events, I believe you can be spared the punishment for your failure. However, you did break the law when you looked at me. Therefore, you will arrive at the Tudai at 1900 hours for your punishment. I believe, due to the nature behind your breaking of this law, a mere 15 is fair. Yes, Reikage-sama, Yugito said tightly without turning and then, at his dismissal, continued out of the office. Once in the hallway, she took several deep breaths, mastering her anger and loathing for her looming punishment. Anyone else, if she had been anyone else, she wouldn't have been punished. It was only because she was a Jinchuriki that she was required to not look at Reikage. Setting aside her anger at such unfair treatment, Yugito set off to the room detailing the foreign villages. Pausing just down the hall, she placed her hand against the special seal lock and flared her chakra. The seal glowed for a moment, then subsided, allowing the door to open so she could enter the small office. The room was cramped, the walls filled with several bookcases holding books, scrolls, and folders. In the center of the room was a small table and a chair. Closing the door behind her, she approached the cases devoted to listing intelligence gathered on each foreign village. Getsu, Hoshi, Kemuri, Kiri. Yugito paused, a grin forming on her face. Konoha. Another moment was spent scanning the intel folders that were divided by names. There was Uchiha and then. Grabbing the one labeled Uzumaki, she turned and set herself at the table. Opening the folder, she paused to check the semi-blurred picture of the boy. Yes, this was the same boy she had fought. Crossing one leg under the other, she propped her chin in hand and began to read. Name Uzumaki Naruto, age, 13, hair, blonde, eyes, blue, distinguishing features, whisker marks, family status, orphan. Standard fare for a report. Yugito sighed, then continued on. Recently graduated from the academy after repeated failures. Apprenticed to Mitarashi Anko, then transferred to Team 10. Again boring and standard, and slightly disappointing as well. He had failed the academy repeatedly. How could someone like that ever defeat her? Completed 2B rank and 1A rank missions successfully. Freshly promoted to Chunin. Single-handedly defeated the Suna Jinchuriki. Yugito paused, then reread the last line. He had beaten Gaara. Without help. It should have been impossible for anyone other than the Reikage or the Hokage to defeat Gaara. Has a goal of becoming Hokage. Held in high regard by a few noble Konoha clans after his defeat of the Suna Jinchuriki and by all minor clans for his stance of shinobi equality. Rumored to have an advanced bloodline called Tenkichiyu, allowing for instant healing or possibly regeneration. Yugito paused, her mind jarred by something. There was something nagging at her, something just beyond her grasp. Frowning, she tried to figure out what it was, before realizing that her memories were being tampered with. The only reason for that was a memory seal. Closing her eyes, she took a breath and flared her Neko chakra, pushing against the seal as she had been trained. It was unusually strong, but then it shuddered and finally broke. The seal gone, her memories came rushing back, prompting her to remember that Tenkichiyu was not an advanced bloodline. It was an onijutsu. Naruto was a Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi. Opening her eyes slowly, she stared at the paper, then at a nearby pen. It was information that needed to be shared. Yugito reached out for the pen, then hesitated. Why should she rat out another Jinchuriki? Because of her loyalty to the Reikage. That was a laugh. This whole village despised her, and the moment her usefulness as a weapon was over they'd extract the demon and seal it into some other child. The cycle would be repeated, and Yugito, despite how much she wanted to prove her usefulness as a weapon, wanted no part of keeping this village safe. Closing the folder, she stood. Against her better judgment, Yugito was going to keep Uzumaki Naruto's secret. Yumi no Iruka sighed, settling in at the ramen bar. He was greeted by the semi-frosty glare of Ayami's father, then gave his sheepish order to the part-time waiter. Left alone, the schoolteacher slumped slightly, praying that Ayami's test came back negative. He really wasn't ready to be a father just yet, although, with his luck, it would happen. Shifting his thoughts away from his personal problems, Iruka focused instead on his students and, in particular, Konohamaru. The young boy had, at one point, been very popular among the other students. Somehow, this had changed. Even Konohamaru's former friends no longer liked him. More frightening was the fact that Konohamaru didn't seem to care about his sudden loss of popularity. The boy was throwing himself instead into his studies. Iruka had even caught the boy trying to practice something from the material intended for older students. He was also studying the human body in a way that was disturbing. It was unnerving to see someone so young so focused on such things. What worried him more, however, was some of the dangerous similarities that were emerging between Konohamaru and Naruto. Iruka, admittedly, hadn't spent much time with his former student lately, but what little time he had spent told him Naruto was changing and not for the better. At least, not in Iruka's opinion. Still, he would keep such opinions to himself. Mainly because he knew that, in Konoha, such things would get back to Naruto and he would hate to hurt his quasi-brother out a friend in such a way. It still didn't mean that Iruka felt safe with Konohamaru picking up some of those traits. Shaking it off, the schoolteacher offered a brief thanks to the disgruntled old man who set his ramen down and then, after subtly checking for poison, hesitantly started eating. Grimacing, he glanced at the old man who was glowering at him. Iruka considered that maybe it was time to think about finding a new ramen stand. At least, until a hand s his back and a familiarly loud voice shouted his name, disrupting his thoughts and causing him to start choking. Oi, oi, are you all right? Naruto said, swinging around to stare at him worriedly. Nodding, Iruka frantically forced down his noodles and gasped for air. Naruto beamed happily and hopped onto the stool beside him. Great, then you can buy me lunch, right? Wait a minute Naruto, Iruka managed, still trying to recover from his near-death by way of ramen. Come on Iruka. We haven't had lunch together in forever, Naruto said, looking around the stand before his smile slipped. Hey, where's Ayami-chan? She's at the doctor's office, Iruka managed, clearing the last of the noodles from his airway. Oi, is something wrong with her? Naruto asked in concern. No, the chef said, looking over at him, a ladle in his hand. She's just getting a test, because of an over-enthusiastic boyfriend. Huh, who's her boyfriend? Naruto blinked, looking around in confusion, then, noticing Iruka's awkward face, grinned. Iruka, you and Ayami-chan. Yeah, just recently, Iruka admitted, scratching the back of his head, acutely aware of the chef's glare. This is great. If you marry her, then I can have all the ramen I want for free. Now wait a minute. Both Iruka and Ayami's father shouted in unison. Oi, so I guess I should order a lot now, huh? Naruto grinned impishly. Naruto, Iruka shouted before pausing to look at the entrance, where Ayami had entered, a happy smile on her face. The schoolteacher, being a ninja, knew without words what that meant. Ayami, her dad said slowly, almost nervous. What did they say? The girl's smile grew slightly as she looked from her father to Iruka, then to Naruto, then back at her father. Twins. Iruka froze, stared at her as the word sank in, and promptly toppled over. Her father clutched his sea and stumbled back, knocking over the pots of ramen. Naruto cried out at the loss of his precious food. Iruka, thankfully, passed out. The air was damp, rich with the soft songs of cicadas and grasshoppers. A secret song, just for those who could truly appreciate the music. Such as the young man, dressed in the gray, high-collared jacket, crouching amidst the tall grass. It was a very beautiful song in Shino's opinion, and he was happy to be able to listen to them once more. Even Kekio and the rest of his Kikaichu seemed lulled by the songs, which meant that Shino felt even more relaxed than normal. Eyes closed, he began to doze, mind drifting to the mission and to his team. It was so odd, in the dream, how easily he viewed each of them as part of his family. Anko was like the crazy woman you knew was related to you, even though you weren't precisely certain how. Ino was the sister you both loved and found amazingly annoying, and Naruto. He was the sister's boyfriend, but, still, family. Still, part of Shino felt uneasy at the absence of the hive that guided the clan, the soft soothing voice that gently reminded all Aberame that they were unique. That there was nothing to fear, that, even when they were gone, they would be remembered. Yet, it was gone, and part of Shino felt very uncomfortable with that development. He snapped out of his dreams and subconscious musings quickly, the air now silent. His Kikaichu were already moving, swarming through the grass and bushes, relaying to him that his father was approaching. That his father's bugs were responsible for the silencing of the song. Standing slowly, Shino turned to face the older man, who was now standing only a few feet away. It was a strange moment. Shino definitely felt something was different between them. What that was exactly he wasn't sure, but it was there. Father, Shino, Shibi intoned, not moving or revealing his emotions. We must discuss a very serious matter. Of course, Shino said, as Kekio whispered what the others told her, that his father seemed hostile. What exactly do we need to talk about? Of certain developments that have garnered the attention of us and the others of the clan. Developments. You have begun to avoid us and the others of the clan. Your Kikaichu hive is isolating itself as well. This is causing unrest and worry among us, Shibi said, his voice holding a faint inflection of unease. I did not mean to cause unrest or worry among the clan, Shino said, silently ordering his Kikaichu to fan out and prepare for an attack. However, certain changes have forced me to isolate myself. Define changes, Shibi said carefully, an eyebrow arching ever so slightly. I have begun to accept that emotions are, in certain situations, an asset. I feel closer to my team than to the clan, that they are my family more than you and the others, Shino explained, listening to Keiko's silent support. I can no longer hear the hive. Quote. You can no longer hear the Abraham hive. Do you mean the Kikaichu hive that lives within you, or the hive that guides all Kikaichu and Aberame? The Aberame hive, Shino said carefully. I am unsure why, or what this could mean. Just that I no longer feel comfortable among the clan. The Aberame are one mind, with one voice. Shibi paused, his tone hesitant. However, there are times when a new Aberame hive is created. You are very wise to avoid the Aberame clan now. Two hives cannot exist together. Even now, my Kikaichu are inciting that I settle this between us. I see, Shino said, his own Kikaichu swarming high into the night sky, shifting and swirling, angry at the threat. And will you? No, Shibi said, turning away. We are interested in why a new hive has been created and in the possibility of two hives coexisting. Shino nodded, calming his Kikaichu, in particular Kekio, and then recalled them to himself. After a moment of silence, in which things felt different between him and his father, Shino spoke. I am interested as well. I have never heard of this. Since the founding of Konoha, there has been only one new hive, Shibi said, turning away completely. Shortly after the beast attacked Konoha, a new hive was created. And it was destroyed. I see, Shino murmured to himself, lowering his gaze slightly. Could this be because of the Kumo Ikki? What, then, of Naruto's chakra and its strange allure for his Kikaichu? To understand this, he would need to understand his clan's origins better, but the only way to do so would be to enter the clan home and retrieve the scroll kept secret within his father's study. We will see you later, Shibi said, disappearing into the forest. Shino stood there, feeling as if he was on the cusp of death and the future. He felt a moment of panic, then, at Kekio's soft assurance that things would be fine, he sighed and quietly walked in the opposite direction. His father might have been willing to allow him to live, but the others in the clan would not. Which meant Shino needed to find a new place to stay and to listen to the songs. I agree, Kekio-chan, Shino intoned, disappearing into the forest. Things are changing. Azuki Yugao watched the girl carefully, studied the way she flowed and shifted through her form. There was no denying that Ino had talent, it was a rather difficult form. Yet, Yugao also knew that the girl was pushing herself too far and too fast with those scrolls. Heiat's style needed to be properly taught. She'd cleared it with the Hokage and Anko, Ino's current sensei. Allowing the girl to finish the form, the Anbu captain stepped into the clearing, impressed to find the girl turning at her presence. Yamanaka, Yugao said, then, seeing the flash of recognition in the younger girl's eyes, approached. Azuki, right. Yes, Yugao said, coming within arm's reach of the girl. Glancing at a nearby scroll, she frowned slightly, then looked back at the girl. So, Ino said, raising an eyebrow, is there a reason you're here? Yes, Yugao said, unsure of how to approach the subject. She hesitated, then remembered how Hayat had first approached her about going out. I wanted to talk about your fight against AOI, but would you mind if we sparred a little first? Ino blinked, then went wide-eyed. Well, sure, if you want. One rule, however, no dances that you might have learned, Yugao said, drawing her sword. Why not? Kenjutsu is about more than dances. It's true that even my own style has variations of them, Yugao explained. However, I wish to see your skill with the blade. Okay, Ino nodded, lifting the blade slowly into a ready position. Yugao watched her opponent carefully, drifting naturally into a defensive posture. Ino shifted her weight, the tip of her kodaki drifting slightly before she darted forward. Yugao easily parried each of the younger girls' then sidestepped, lunging for Ino's legs. The genin nimbly backflipped away from the attack, landed cat-footed, and advanced on Yugao with impressive speed. Her blade was barely a flash of light as it licked out and then back in, yet Yugao blocked each attack. Silently, the Anbu was assessing Ino's skill. The girl had a natural skill with the sword, and good balance and timing for a beginner. No wonder AOI had been K by the girl. Ino was the better with that sword than some people twice her age. Definitely room for improvement, but Yugao conceded that Ino was impressive. Ino lunged for her stomach, and Yugao parried the blow, only to realize that she had been faked out and the girl was actually at her T. Instincts flared, and Yugao dropped to a knee, spun around Ino and, regaining her feet, spun around, leveling her blade against Ino's N. Wow, Ino breathed, turning to stare at her in surprise. Yugao slowly eased her sword away, but mentally she was replaying that moment. For this girl to create a believable enough feint to catch Yugao off guard, that spoke a lot of the girl's potential. So that was why Hayat had been so set on teaching Ino his kenjutsu. Ino-san, a sword is only a sword. It is the wielder that makes it dangerous, Yugao said slowly, sheathing her sword curtly, and, while I am impressed with your level of skill, I believe you should no longer teach yourself. What? Why not? Hayat-sensei gave me those scrolls and taught me Suki Adori for a reason. Ino protested heatedly, eyes narrowing. Yes, he did. However, kenjutsu requires more than solo practice. You must spar, to hone your instincts, and you need someone that is much stronger than you so that your skill will improve, Yugao said, lifting a finger to point at the blonde. You are very talented, but AOI was not a true kenjutsu user. He was really strong, though, Ino said defensively. Yes, and yet, you are here, and he is Yugao said without inflection. Skill can overcome power, but only if it is honed and gained properly. I knew Hayat, and I know his style. I believe he would rather I train you until such time as you are fully ready to learn the skills in those scrolls. Train me. Yes. I came here after hearing of how you defeated that AOI to ask you to become my apprentice in kenjutsu. Yugao paused, crossing her arms, wishing that she could ignore the girl. But Hayat's had asked this of her, and she would do as he wanted. If you decide to accept my offer, you first agree to limit yourself to the first scroll until I feel you are ready for more. Secondly, you agree to follow my instruction without question or hesitation. I don't know. Ino mumbled, shifting her weight awkwardly. Indecision was all over her face, and Yugao sighed. Think about it, and, when you decide, come to the Anbu headquarters and ask for me. Ino nodded, and Yugao walked away without making a noise. She was improving, but it was slow. It was hard to guess that she was the main branch heir, especially when she battled against him. Still, she was improving. Neji supposed Hinata might be a decent match against Hanabi now. Ducking a strike at his head, Neji spun, sweeping her legs. Hinata managed a sloppy shoulder roll and regained her feet, hands in position once more. Pausing, Neji took a moment to focus on her. There was a hint of exhaustion, but that had been there since before the start of the match. She had been pushing herself a great deal, inspired more and more by Naruto. It wasn't too surprising, really. Naruto seemed to have that effect on people. Her posture was good, solid, but he could see the weaknesses. Her eyes strained, attention lapsed. This fight was over. Hinata suddenly charged, flashes of chakra filling the air as the two Hyuga clashed once more. A palm heel was gracefully turned away, a kick neatly avoided, another palm heel deflected. Neji lunged, his own palm heel aimed at her face, only to have it deflected, his kick stopped, another leg sweep avoided. On and on they went, Neji ever the proper branch member, allowing Hinata the dignity she was due in this sparring match. Still, dragging the match out any longer could be considered an attempt at humiliating her. Striking out, aiming for a tenketsu, Neji just barely registered the change in his opponent's style. Yuken was a graceful, soft style aimed at damaging the internal organs. It was characterized by sweeping blocks to deflect and light touches, from an upright stance. Hinata, however, had dropped her stance deeper and, her block had struck, not deflected. Most importantly, her strike had not been light. Hinata's hand had, upon impact, coiled into a fist and driven a great deal of concentrated chakra into his stomach. Neji recoiled, eyes wide, allowing Hinata to follow this with another attack from the unusual stance and then another. Losing his balance, Neji hit the ground, rolled and then regained his feet with a sweeping motion. His ribs felt broken, at the very least cracked. His stomach felt as if it had been punctured, and his arm felt shattered. Flexing his fingers he was relieved to find it whole, but, staring at Hinata, who was looking timid, he frowned. Hinata-sama, may I inquire as to what you used against me? Hinata shifted slightly, rubbing her fingers together, blushing. A Matsuyanagi-ru. Anu, it is the original version of the Yuken. Anu, it combines both external and internal damage, using chakra to, enhance the external damage. Quote. Where did you learn it? Neji asked slowly, a sense of wonder flickering through him. There was a scroll, Anu, in the main branch library. It's been untranslatable for a long time, but, since I wanted to improve myself, I tried to learn it. I used my Byakugan to study the few pictures without being caught and I've never used it before. Neji said, gingerly touching his ribs. I believe it is quite devastating, Hinata-sama. Properly used, I believe it could truly be something to fear. Are you okay, Neji-nisan? I am fine, Neji allowed, and I respectfully remind you that it is improper to refer to me as such. I am branch family, Hinata-sama. Anu, of course, Hinata said, sounding disappointed. Anu, how is your father? Healthy as ever, Neji allowed, knowing partly why Hinata was interested in his father's health and constantly tried to treat him so familiarly. Years ago, there had been a delegation from Kumo trying to establish firmer ties with Konoha, yet that had been a cover for an attempt at Kei Hinata. Her own father had, of course, stopped the attempt, but the Kumo delegation had attempted to demand Hyashi's head for the insult. His father had offered to offer his own life up instead, however, Konoha had responded violently. The Sandaime had ordered that all the heads of the Lightning Ninja be sent back to Kumo with the threat of all-out war if they tried such an underhanded tactic again. So Hinata felt she was much too gentle in Neji's opinion that she was in both his and his father's debt. Merely because his father had willingly faced his inescapable fate. All branch members were destined to S for the main branch, Hisashi had explained that to Neji, and Neji had taken it to heart. Anu, Neji-nisan. Can I ask you something? As you wish, Hinata-sama, Neji said, keeping his sigh of annoyance from escaping. So far, he had yet to stop her from referring to him as Nisan. What were the Chunin exams like? I mean, Anu. The first two. Hinata paused, sounding uneasy. They were difficult, but nothing too dangerous, Neji explained, raising an eyebrow. I believe you could easily handle them, if you desired of course, to take the exams. Anu, I wanted to. BT, Shikamaru-kun and Choji-kun did not see a reason. Then of course you respected their wishes, Neji guessed, finding her timid nature slightly annoying. Hinata-sama, if I may be so bold, I would suggest you make it clear that you would like to attempt the exams. Force them if necessary. Politeness is useful only to a point. But I can't. I believe that you can, Neji offered firmly with a nod. If it is your destiny to fail or to pass, to take the exam or not, those, of course, determine the outcomes. But you must, if there is something you desire, Apply your whole being into attempting to discover the destiny that awaits you. Thank you, Neji-Nisan, Hinata said, bowing slightly, then paused, giving him a curious look. Is that why you are allowing Tenten-san to pursue you? Quote. Neji blinked, staring at Hinata in surprise. Well, that was unexpected. I am sorry, that is none of my concern, Hinata offered with another bow. Anu, if you will excuse me. That said, the heiress quickly turned and departed the training yard. Neji blinked once more, then sighed, heading for the branch family compound. Apparently, Hinata had learned not only a new style but also how to read people much more clearly. If he was to meet Tenten for the training date, as she had called it, he would need to wash his hair and, of course, be treated for his wounds. For some reason, he didn't mind that he would have to explain that they came from Hinata. A Matsuyanagi-ru, it somehow seemed fitting for her. There was an unexpected strength in both, and he wondered how long it would be before anyone else discovered that fact. Perched high over the village, contently munching her dango, Anko listened to the faint noise of the village drifting up to her. They were all so happy and alive. Did any of them even know what it was like to suffer? Part of her wanted to teach them, to go down there among those happy, complacent villagers that had never made as. She forcibly stopped that train of thought, knowing that it led to nothing good. It never had and never would, but it was part of her. Because she hated them, then, of course, she also envied them. What would it be like, she wondered, to be normal, not to have to decay or inflict pain to find satisfaction? Then her hate would flare, her fury at the thought. Why should she have to wonder? Why should they get to be so happy? Why was it her, only her, that was stuck on the outside looking in? Family and friends denied to her, a life outside of being a ninja forever beyond her reach. Only, Anko reminded herself it wasn't. With Naruto, she had a source of normalcy, a sense of belonging that she had not had since Orochimaru. Maybe they weren't related by B, but they were as good as family, and if he were just a little older. Finishing her latest stick of dango, the Kanoiki paused, sensing the not-so-subtle approach of her former lover, the current Hokage. Tossing her stick aside, Anko produced a new one and wondered what exactly he had to say to her. The Hokage came to a stop just to her right, hovering just in her peripheral vision. Kakashi. Anko. A beat. Needs something. Well, that is generally why you seek people out, Kakashi said happily, his eye curving up. Looking at him curiously, Anko raised an eyebrow, taking a slightly vicious bite out of her dango. Well, I figured you'd be thinking about giving up teaching, since Naruto's gonna be leaving for a while. Quote. How do you figure that? Anko asked, giving him a calculating look. Kakashi might seem flaky, but he had been Anbu commander, and was now Hokage, for a reason. Well, Sandaime did force you into teaching in the first place, Kakashi explained brightly. True, but it's not so bad. Anko admitted thoughtfully. Though, I would love to pick my own students. Well, in that case, there's a new teaching position opening. Kakashi said, producing a scroll casually. The current person in charge of the Anbu trainee program is being reassigned, if you're interested. So I get to teach supposedly high level, bad as shinobi. Yup. Even get to design part of the test that allows them entrance to the program. Sounds good, Anko admitted, taking the scroll. Great, well, now I gotta go talk with Danzu. I'll see you later, Kakashi said with a small wave of his hand, before disappearing in a shunshin. Whistling, Anko broke the seal on the scroll, her stick of dango paused halfway to her mouth. Hesitating, Anko briefly read the scroll, then finished her food and tossed it away casually. Scanning the details more thoroughly, she couldn't help but smile viciously. Finally, an S-rank mission. It was going to prove tricky as hell, too. Not only was she supposed to train the Anbu recruits, but she was supposed to be the current leader of Root. On its own, that would be difficult enough, but she had to do it in such a way that it would be taken as an act done by one Uchiha Itachi. No wonder Kakashi had come to her and not summoned her to his office. This was definitely volatile information. Resealing the scroll, she set it aside, allowing the erasing seal to work. Musing softly, she stared out over the village and at the setting sun. So, how exactly could she kill the man and not have it linked back to her? Each had their own unique signature, and faking someone else's would prove very tricky. Anko, however, was the best at A. The woman was confident that, above all else, she could fake Itachi's style well enough to be undetected. Producing a new stick of dango, Anko sighed, feeling a sense of dread fill her. Tomorrow would be the last time she saw Naruto for 3 years. 3 years was a long time. A lot could happen, and, knowing Jiraiya, there would be no contact in that whole time. Climbing to her feet, Anko stretched, then nodded decisively. The closet thing she had to family was leaving tomorrow, and she was going to need plenty of ramen, dango and sake to see him off properly. The name Sabaku no Gaara invoked certain images and words. Words such as insanity, and demon. Images were, of course, more telling: a pair of haunted green eyes, an emotionless face, the maniacal grin he wore when crushing people with his sand, the slow and deliberate gait when he approached. Temari knew these images and words, along with many more. She had grown up with Gaara. He was, in her opinion, the most insane person she had ever met. More than once, growing up, she had prayed for his sand or for someone to K him. Yet, underneath all of that, was the weak bond of family. He was her brother, and part of her wanted to cry over him, to offer some comfort for him. Now, finally, she could. As he lay sleeping peacefully, for the first time in his life, she sat on the side of his bed, stroking his forehead as her mother used to do for her. Ever since that Konoha ninja, Uzumaki Naruto, had fought and sealed Gaara, the village had been peaceful. There was no demon attempting to consume her youngest brother's mind, no nightmares. It seemed, indeed, that the only drawback was his inability to use his sand as easily. In Temari's opinion, however, she could deal with a Gaara that seemed human now and not quite so homicidal. A Gaara that occasionally called her Nisan, instead of Temari, or Seigo, in reference to the order in which he would K her. A Gaara that was more brother than monster. Looking up, she paused, narrowing her eyes on the man she called father. The man stood in the doorway, staring at her and Gaara coldly. He was upset that no one in the village could as yet figure out how to unseal Gaara. Konoha's sealing system had always been above and beyond other villages. What do you want? Temari asked curtly, ready for anything. Nothing, her father said, eyes hard. This changes nothing, he will K you. Oh, I know he'll K me one day. After he K you, Kankuro, the rest of this village, and Uzumaki Naruto, Temari said, climbing out of the bed to approach the door. All I get, father, is the distinct satisfaction of seeing us first. That said, she s the door in his face and sighed. Turning, she saw those green eyes silently staring at her, and Temari quietly returned to the bed. Sitting down, she hesitantly reached out to stroke his cheek. He stared up at her, emotions unreadable, and then slowly closed his eyes once more. Temari continued to stroke his face, silent tears coursing down her cheeks. 2 rapid seals, Uma and Tora, a deep inhale of breath to mix with chakra, then a sharp exhale. The darkened training area grew bright as the crackling stream of red and yellow flames exploded outward before becoming a sphere of flames. It lasted for several long minutes, with a slow but steady growth until finally it ebbed away, leaving an unnatural warmth in the air. Not bad, Anko said, reclining against the tree finishing a stick of dango. I think it's time we moved on from the Kaiten, Gukakyu no Jutsu. Right, Naruto said, frowning slightly as he considered the previous jutsu. In comparison, the futon, Daitopper had been cakewalked to performing the Gukakyu, but he wasn't sure why. Not the required chakra, or the seals, but there was just something about it that made it seem more difficult for him, but he could forget about it for the moment. Turning, he faced Anko, waiting for the older woman to finish her dango and teach him the next technique. She had shown up a few hours ago, just after sunset, and dragged him out to a training field. Her explanation had been last-minute training before they had a farewell party, because she would not be seeing him off tomorrow. He felt a little disappointed at that, but Naruto understood it would be difficult for her. It was hard on him as well. He actually felt closer to her than he ever had Iruka. Still, he didn't have much of a choice in the matter. Akatsuki would not care about anything but getting their hands on him, so he had to leave so that he could get stronger. Strong enough to protect everyone precious to him. You know, Anko said after a moment, staring at him oddly, you didn't turn out half bad. Huh, Naruto managed blinking, unsure what she meant by that. It's just, Naruto, I was never intended to be a Jonin sensei. My world, All of my skills, they are geared toward deaths. But, Anko paused almost thoughtfully, I trained you the best I could, taught you the best I could, and Naruto, you've made me proud. Naruto blinked slowly, staring at the woman, feeling a tightening in his sea. It was weird, Anko had never talked like this, never said those words to him. He wanted to say something, do something, but he could only stare at her in confusion and surprise. So, Anko said, looking away, staring off into the distance, I just wanted you to know that. It's not much, knowing that, but. Not much. Naruto echoed hollowly, unable to believe she would honestly believe that. Seeing her look, he moved his mouth in silent words, then finally managed to speak, Anko, it means a lot to me. Even if you don't think it's worth much, to me it's precious. Anko just sort of stared at him, then looked away quickly, a sort of awkward silence settling over the clearing. Naruto stared at her, though about hugging her, but knew it would not be a good idea. Still, it felt so weird, just standing there not talking and waiting for something to be said or done. What I'm going to teach you now, Anko finally said, turning her gaze back to him, I never wanted to teach you. I promised myself to never teach you any jutsu my sensei taught me, but now I have to. Why? Because, I need to know that if the worst should happen, you'll at least have something to take them with you. Anko said, crossing her arms to stare at him intently, but you have to understand what I'm going to teach you, it's not to be used unless you have absolutely no other choice. None. As in your S and they're a threat you have to stop at all costs. Right, got it. Only use it on Orochimaru or Akatsuki. Naruto said, then at her hard look held his hands up, Oi, I get it, okay. Naruto, this isn't something I ever wanted to pass on. It's kinjutsu, and if the Hokage ever suspected I taught it to you, I'd be in an Anbu cell waiting for transfer to Hitoshi. Don't worry, I won't ever use it. Naruto swore, with such sincerity that Anko sighed. Suja Sausai no Jutsu, Anko said slowly, is A rank and has been forbidden because of its dark nature. This technique involves you forming a special hand seal using the target's own corresponding hand. Then, you change your chakra from positive to negative and, that's the end. Naruto managed, face scrunching up thoughtfully. Your chakra in its neutral state, is positive. When you forcefully convert it to negative and it touches an unchanged chakra, the result is a explosion of both you and your enemy. Anko said, then paused, sighing, the larger the sources of chakra, the bigger the explosion. If I performed it with sensei, we'd take out about a mile around and leave a crater about 5 feet deep. Wait, hold it, this thing can destroy things for a mile. Well, Anko said, temporizing, actually the explosion from me and sensei would only take out a 12-foot radius. But when you invert your chakra like this, it causes a chain reaction. And everything has chakra, Naruto said, eyes widening as he got the implication. If he understood it right, then this move was definitely not a thing to use lightly. Seeing her expectant look, he gulped, asking the question to confirm his thoughts, so, your explosion would cause other things to explode until, what, it ran out of chakra. Like setting off a series of blast notes. Until your, negative, chakra was used up actually, Anko corrected mildly, don't worry about it TEI. I'm just going to show you how to change your chakra and the hand seal, hopefully you'll never have to use it. TEI? Naruto asked, then at Anko's slightly embarrassed look at being caught calling him her younger brother, he grinned, Nichan worries too much. Runt. PSC ho. They know you're behind Unity. Of course they do, Danzu said, reading the report in front of him. Are you sure that this is what Uzumaki said to Tsunade in the forest? Yes, sir, my dad K the FQB, direct quote. The root ninja paused. Danzu-sama, if they know about your involvement with Unity, then surely they'll try to you. Of course they will. The current Hokage is the former Anbu commander, after all, the grizzled warhawk said dismissively as he turned his attention to another sheet. So, Kiyoshi's private report confirms that the Yondaime is Naruto's father. Yes, sir, and you're sure that the Yamanaka bee is the great-great-niece of Tsunade? Yes, I see, interesting, Danzu mused softly, then looked up at the gathered ninja. Our main priority right now is trying to gain more supporters and sway public opinion. I imagine, after all that's happened, it shouldn't be too hard, but I want immediate surveillance on Sarutobi's grandson and Tsunade's niece. What about Uzumaki? And Asuma? Even Tsunade. Tsunade isn't going anywhere, besides, she's worthless for any of our plans. Asuma would most likely resist any seals, and Uzumaki is leaving for a training trip with the oaf, Jiraiya. Danzo leaned back in his seat, studying them. Of course, when Naruto comes back, it'll be a different story. No matter how strong he is, we'll have people even stronger. Yes, sir, the group intoned in unison. Then, one of them carefully spoke up. Danzo-sama, the attempt. I expect Anko will be handed that task. She is the only one Kakashi can trust after all, Danzo said simply, scowling for a moment before grinning slightly. I believe a memory seal could prove useful and then she could join us, on her back of course. At the amused and interested chuckles, the man gestured for them to leave. Once they were gone, he scowled in deep thought, knowing that he was actually in a very precarious position. Anko would not be so easily defeated. He understood her curse seal, her connection to Orochimaru. She had a proven track record of breaking seals though sheer lust, which meant he would have to get her neutralized another way. Then there was Naruto, that boy was strong. Maybe too strong, if he could overcome such a powerful opponent as the Suna Jinchuriki without aid. When he came back from his training trip, there was no telling how strong he could be. Yet, Naruto could not be like so many other potential threats. The boy's connection to the Yondaime and his own personal status within the village made him a very powerful tool for unity. To control Naruto would require, not brute strength, but controlling those that he cared about. The Yamanaka girl and Anko were the most likely targets. He couldn't help but chuckle, wondering why the strongest were always so easily controlled. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.